Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking a single, really fascinating source. It's a Wikipedia article about a largely forgotten 1956 song called Rocket.
Right?
And we're going to use it to unpack a completely hidden chapter in music history.
It really is a wild story.
It is. And we've custom-tailored this analysis specifically for you, the listener, because the facts within this one article build toward this massive, just a massive aha moment about career survival.
Yeah, career survival, secret identities, and really how we handle industry disruption.
Exactly.
Because on the surface, it reads like an obscure piece of music trivia, but when you look at the mechanics behind this single track, it becomes a masterclass in how professionals react when their entire livelihood is suddenly flipped upside down.
And the core subject of our analysis today is George Jones.
Yep.
Who is widely recognized as a foundational pillar, an absolute legend of traditional country music.
Oh, absolutely. He's country royalty.
Right. But in 1956, he secretly recorded and released a rockabilly track under the fake name Thumper Jones.
Thumper Jones. I love that name so much.
It's so good. Okay, let's unpack this. We really need to set the scene and look at the exact market conditions of 1956.
Setting the stage is crucial here.
Elvis Presley has just exploded into the mainstream. It is a complete cultural earthquake. And the established country music industry is watching its young audience defect at a terrifying rate.
The panic among traditional musicians was, it was palpable. And the source article captures this perfectly through a quote from biographer Bob Allen.
Okay, what does he say?
In his book, George Jones, The Life and Times of a Honky-Tonk Legend, Allen describes the arrival of Elvis and rock and roll by stating, it temporarily sent the country music industry sprawling flat on its ass.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sprawling flat on its ass. That is such a striking physical description of an industry losing its footing.
It really is.
It's not just, a slight dip in quarterly revenue. It is a complete collapse of the established infrastructure.
It was a total collapse. Allen notes that the sales figures for traditional country music plummeted dangerously, and because of that sudden vacuum, even the most dedicated, hardcore country artists felt this immense, immediate pressure to pivot.
They had to.
Right. Allen writes that just as a matter of sheer professional survival, these artists were rushing to pump some Elvis glottal bestiality into their own music.
Okay, hold on. That specific phrase, Elvis glottal bestiality, that really demands a closer look.
It's a vivid phrase, for sure.
It highlights the stark musical contrast of the era. The honky-tonk tradition that George Jones was mastering was built on sorrowful restraint, precise vocal phrasing, very specific emotional delivery.
Exactly. It was a very controlled art form.
And then Elvis brought rhythm, syncopation, and this guttural, aggressive, highly physical attack to the microphone. It wasn't polite.
No, not at all.
He was entirely disruptive to the established Nashville sound.
And what's fascinating here is how directly we can map this historical panic onto modern professional anxieties.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about it. It's the 1956 equivalent of the generative AI shockwave we see today.
That is a great analogy.
Right. You have professionals who have spent decades mastering a highly specific traditional craft, suddenly waking up to find the market exclusively wants this chaotic, disruptive new technology.
And the traditional sales figures plummet, the audience moves on, and you are left facing a brutal reality.
Do you hold your ground as a purist and risk obsolescence?
Or do you adapt to a framework you fundamentally don't understand?
Exactly.
And George Jones wasn't just observing this shift from a distance. He was actively standing in the blast radius.
He was right there.
Our source notes that Jones had actually played with both Elvis and Johnny Cash on the Louisiana Hayride.
Right, the Louisiana Hayride.
So he wasn't just reading chart reports in some office.
Yeah.
He was physically sharing the stage with them, watching the crowds react to Elvis firsthand.
He saw the energy of the young audience completely shifting toward this new sound.
And he knew his traditional style wasn't generating that same electricity.
There is a profound psychological difference between hearing rumors about a competitor disrupting your market and actually standing in the wings watching them steal your audience right in front of your eyes.
Yeah, that had to hurt.
He saw the writing on the wall, he saw the plunging sales, and that proximity to the disruption forced his hand.
Which brings us to the creation of Thumper Jones. We have a remarkably candid quote from Jones himself regarding his mindset at that exact moment.
Oh, I love this quote.
This comes from an interview he did with Billboard magazine in 2006, looking back on the era, and he didn't dress it up as some artistic exploration. He said, and I quote, "I was desperate. When you're hungry, a poor man with a house full of kids. I'll try anything once.
It completely strips away all the mythology we usually attach to legendary artists.
Totally.
It wasn't about a sudden burning passion for rockabilly. It was pure raw economics. It was about putting food on the table when his primary source of income was drying up.
And in that same Billboard interview, he elaborated on the sheer utility of the decision, saying, I said, well, hell, I'll try anything once. I tried Daggum How Come It, and Rocket a bunch of shit.
The strategy he employed with his producer, Pappy Daly, is incredibly telling here.
Walk us through it.
In March of 1956, they went into the studio to execute this pivot. They recorded 2 songs that Jones actually wrote himself. Rocket served as the A-side, and Daggum How Come It was the B-side.
Right.
And they released the single on Starday Records on May 5, 1956, under the catalog number Starday 240.
But wait, if he was truly that desperate for cash, why not leverage the audience he already had?
What do you mean?
Well, why not slap George Jones in huge letters across the record and try to cash in on the rock and roll craze with his established fan base?
Because he fundamentally understood brand equity, even if he didn't use that exact terminology back then.
Right.
He knew he had a core country audience to protect. If a respected traditional artist suddenly puts out a trend-chasing rock and roll record, they risk alienating the base that currently sustains them.
That makes sense.
But conversely, if he doesn't attempt to capture the new market, he risks starvation because the traditional industry is tanking. So he needed a way to resolve that paradox.
Here's where it gets really interesting. His solution to that paradox is the pseudonym.
Yes.
In that 2006 interview, he laid out the exact logic behind the fake name. He explained, I didn't want my name on the rock and roll thing, so I told him to put Thumper Jones on it, and if it did something good, if it didn't, how I didn't want to be shamed with it.
Thumper Jones. It's brilliant.
It is.
He and Pappy Daly engineered plausible deniability. It allowed him to step into a completely unproven market without risking the reputation he had painstakingly built under his real name.
Think about it for you, the listener. How often do we want to try a new skill or pivot, but we fear ruining our professional reputation?
All the time.
Thumper Jones was basically a risk-free beta test. It is the mid-century equivalent of a secret beta test.
It really is. In software development, you don't risk your flagship enterprise brand on a buggy, unproven version 1.
No, you release a beta to a small segment of the market to see if the core mechanics actually work.
Exactly. Thumper Jones was George Jones beta testing his viability as a rock and roll star.
That is the perfect framework for understanding this move. He was testing the waters with a built-in safety net.
Because if the market responded and the record climbed the charts, he could have easily orchestrated a reveal down the line.
Right. Surprise, the new rockabilly sensation is actually George Jones.
Yeah, and then ridden that wave to massive financial success. But if the market rejected the sound, the failure belonged exclusively to Thumper Jones.
The George Jones brand remains untarnished.
Exactly. And the traditional country audience never feels betrayed.
It allows a professional to participate in industry disruption without fully committing their legacy to it.
Such a smart move.
But we have to look at the actual data from this grand experiment. The single drops in May 1956, and the market response is entirely non-existent.
Crickets.
Yeah. Our source notes that the single failed to chart entirely. The beta test was a definitive failure.
The market spoke, and the answer was a resounding no. Thumper Jones was not going to be the answer to Elvis Presley.
But what is truly revealing about this chapter is how George Jones internalized that failure for the rest of his career.
He took it so hard.
He carried a deep, lifelong disdain for the rock and roll sides he cut during that era. It wasn't just a failed experiment to him. It became a source of active embarrassment.
He hated them.
The Wikipedia article references his 1995 autobiography, I Live to Tell It All. When discussing the Thumper Jones records, he wrote, during the years when I've encountered those records, I've used them for frisbees.
Use them for frisbees.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a funny image, but it really masks a profound level of professional shame. He didn't just want to ignore the pivot. He wanted to physically fling the evidence into the woods so no one could ever analyze it.
Get rid of it entirely.
Right. He viewed Thumper Jones as a humiliating lapse in judgment, a moment of weakness where he compromised his true artistic roots just to chase a fleeting trend.
He viewed those plastic discs as entirely worthless, a physical manifestation of a failed compromise.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, A really fascinating contradiction emerges.
No more.
Jones hated these tracks. He thought they lacked any artistic merit whatsoever. But history, music critics, and his own highly respected peers vehemently disagreed with his harsh self-assessment.
The counter perspective here completely recontextualizes the Thumper Jones era. Let's look at the evidence provided by Nick Tosches.
Yes.
He wrote a comprehensive analysis for Texas Monthly in 1994 titled The Devil and George Jones. And Tosches argues that Jones's narrative, that this was just a desperate fake persona put on to chase Elvis, is historically inaccurate.
A great point.
Tosches wrote, though Jones would never acknowledge it, the rockabilly impulse of the early 50s had affected his sound as much as the lingering voices of Cuff and Williams.
Tosches is making a critical distinction here. He's arguing that the rock and roll energy wasn't just some external costume Jones put on for a paycheck.
Right.
It was an innate part of his musical DNA. It was woven into his sound right alongside the traditional influences of country legends like Roy Cuff and Hank Williams.
And the timeline Tosches uses to prove this is the most compelling piece of evidence in the entire source.
It really blows the whole desperate pivot theory out of the water.
Tosches points to a track George Jones recorded called Play It Cool, Man, Play It Cool.
Okay.
This track was recorded in 1954. That date is essential because it is several months before Elvis Presley's debut.
Wow.
And Tosches notes that this 1954 track bordered on pure rockabilly.
That changes the context entirely. Before Elvis arrived to disrupt the industry, before the sales plummeted, and before the sheer desperation of 1956 set in, George Jones was already organically experimenting with that aggressive, rhythmic edge.
He was naturally feeling out the boundaries of what would become rockabilly.
He just refused to claim ownership of that impulse later in life because it conflicted with his established identity as a country purist.
And it wasn't just retrospective music critics noticing this either. His actual contemporaries saw it in real time.
Oh, yeah.
The source brings in Johnny Cash, who, as we established, was right there on the Louisiana hayride with both Jones and Elvis.
The ultimate insider.
In a 1989 documentary about George Jones called Same Old Me, Cash went on the record about the rockabilly era.
Yeah.
Cash insisted George Jones would have been a really hot rockabilly artist if he'd approached it from that angle.
And Cash immediately followed that up with a brilliant addendum. He said, well, he was really, but never got the credit for it.
Think about the weight of that validation.
It's massive.
Johnny Cash, one of the most authentic, uncompromising artists in American history, is looking at the very tracks George Jones throws into the woods like frisbees, and he is calling them legitimate.
Cash didn't see a shameful sellout.
Not at all.
He saw a genuinely hot rockabilly artist who simply didn't receive the historical credit he deserved.
It perfectly illustrates the classic scenario where the creator is their own harshest, most inaccurate critic.
Oh, for sure. Jones looked at Rocket and saw a desperate compromise born of economic panic. Johnny Cash looked at the exact same record and saw a missed opportunity for Jones to be recognized for a dynamic talent he genuinely possessed.
It really forces you to consider how many times a professional might bury a project, a pivot, or an experiment because it feels inauthentic or embarrassing in the moment.
Meanwhile, the experts around them might look at that exact same experiment and recognize a foundational genius that the creator is too close to see.
We hide our Thumper Jones moments because we think they dilute our core identity.
Yeah.
But sometimes that unpolished experimentation is exactly what we need to evolve. And the ultimate irony of this historical deep dive, which the source text points out with perfect timing, centers on Jones's subsequent massive success.
This is the best part.
He spends years trying to distance himself from the rock and roll impulse, pretending Thumper Jones was just a momentary lapse in judgment. But what was George Jones's very first #1 country hit?
It was the song White Lightning.
White Lightning. And the writer behind White Lightning was J.P. Richardson, who the world knows better by his stage name, the Big Bopper.
The Big Bopper, a massive defining figure in early rock and roll and rockabilly, the man famous for Chantilly lace.
George Jones' very first chart-topping, career-defining country smash was written by a rockabilly star.
Incredible.
And as the source explicitly notes, the song itself carried a distinct, undeniable rock and roll edge. He literally could not escape the influence he was trying so desperately to hide.
The very genre he was running from, the very sound he was discarding as plastic frisbees, was the exact ingredient required to fuel his breakthrough to the top of the charts.
That is just wild.
White Lightning resonated so powerfully precisely because it successfully synthesized his traditional country vocal mastery with that aggressive, rhythmic rock and roll energy he had secretly beta tested as Thumper Jones.
So what does this all mean? We have taken a forgotten 1956 B-side and followed it through to some incredibly resonant truths about how careers function under pressure.
We really have.
We've examined how sudden, sweeping industry disruption can trigger sheer panic, forcing even the most established professionals to scramble for economic survival.
And we've seen how that desperation can lead to highly strategic risk mitigation.
Like launching a secret pseudonym to test a volatile new market without compromising a core brand.
Exactly. And we've seen how brutally unforgiving we can be toward our own past experiments.
It serves as a vital reminder regarding the hidden architecture of a long career. The things you hide away out of embarrassment, the side projects that failed to gain traction, the frantic pivots you made when the market shifted, those efforts might actually command deep respect from your peers.
Just as Johnny Cash respected Thumper Jones.
Exactly. More importantly, those seemingly failed experiments often serve as the hidden, necessary foundation for your most significant future achievements.
Jones had to navigate the awkwardness of the Thumper Jones experiment to eventually unlock the formula that made White Lightning a #1 hit. He had to try on the mask to figure out how to integrate that disruptive new energy into his authentic self.
Which raises an important question, something for you to mull over as you navigate your own professional landscape.
We frequently discuss selling out as the ultimate career sin. The prevailing wisdom is that if you alter your style to chase a new market trend, you forfeit your integrity.
Right.
But if a legendary foundational artist like George Jones had to secretly compromise his perceived artistic purity just to feed his family during a massive industry upheaval, is the concept of selling out merely a myth we tell ourselves to maintain an illusion of control?
That is a fascinating thought.
If surviving in a rapidly changing world requires putting on a mask, adopting a pseudonym, and risking total failure in a new discipline, then perhaps our own embarrassing Thumper Jones moments aren't failures to be hidden away.
No.
Perhaps they are the brave, absolutely necessary steps toward our ultimate evolution.
Navigating disruption is rarely a clean, elegant process. It is usually messy, uncomfortable, and full of hidden beta tests.
And that's okay.
We hope this analysis gave you a new lens through which to view your own professional pivots, failures, and eventual successes. Thank you for joining us. Keep exploring those hidden histories, and we will see you next time.